Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Know Your History, and today's topic is going to be Incan mummies. You've probably heard of mummies from Egypt. I mean, pretty much anyone who's gotten past middle school has heard of Egyptian mummies at this point. But Egypt isn't the only place where mummies have been discovered. Mummies have been found all over the world, from China to Europe and all the way to South America, which is the region we're going to be focusing on today. The Inca Empire was the largest empire in all of pre-Columbian civilization, and scholars even estimate it to have been the largest empire in the world during the early 16th century. It was located in the westernmost region of South America within the Andes Mountains and Amazon jungle, occupying most of what is now Bolivia, Peru, Chile, and Ecuador. Now that geography is out of the way, let's get exactly into what it is that defines a mummy. A mummy is defined in archaeology as a human being or animal that has been preserved either on purpose for ritual practices or on accident as a result of the environment, depending on how the person or the animal died. Mummies can form as a result of exposure to chemicals, extremely cold weather, low humidity, or lack of air, all of which can severely hamper the process of decomposition. The first mummies ever discovered were found in shallow graves in an Egyptian desert in the late 1800s, which probably helps explain why the Egyptians get so much of the mummification glory from both Hollywood and the mainstream media. A unique aspect about Incan mummification rituals in relation to other cultures is that the Inca mummified people of all classes, whereas in most places, most notably Egypt, mummification was performed to preserve the remains of important aristocrats and rulers who were viewed as gods. Beliefs surrounding Incan mummification, on the contrary, considered mummies to be portals to the gods rather than gods themselves, as rewards for offering human sacrifices. Human sacrifice, especially child sacrifice, was an integral part of the process for the Inca, as was ancestor worship, which is another common practice that has been observed in many cultures around the world. Unlike most other cultures that practice mummification, however, the Inca seldom buried their mummies. Instead, they were displayed in temples, sometimes in the homes of elite families or the descendants of the person who was mummified. They were viewed as living pipelines to the gods, retaining ownership of property, being given personal servants and seats of honor at weddings and funerals, taken to festivals to visit with other mummies, and most importantly, they were consulted as oracles. It was also customary to lavish mummies with gifts, ranging from fine foods to clothing, before beginning worship. In order to get a thorough understanding of the Incan mummification process and why it was so important to the Incan people, it is important to establish a basic foundation regarding the beliefs that Incan mummification was centered around. The Incan creation myth begins with the god Viracocha, whom they believe created the earth first and then plucked the sun and moon from the depths of Lake Titicaca. Yes, you heard me correctly, there is a lake right between Bolivia and Peru called Lake Titicaca. It is one of the largest lakes in all of South America, and it was a very important religious site for the Incan people. The most important Incan god was the sun god Inti, who is believed to be the ancestor of their emperors and rulers. Other significant gods included Ilapa, the god of rain, thunder, lightning, and war, and Mama Kia, the moon goddess and sister wife to Inti. Incan gods were worshipped in places called huacas, and they could be anything from man-made shrines to caves, springs, or even oddly shaped rocks. The most important gods, however, were worshipped at the famous Coricancha temple complex. This was the site of the main temple of Cusco, the Inca Empire's capital city. Cusco still exists today as a large city in southeastern Peru. At the Coricancha religious burial site in Cusco, archaeologists uncovered a dedicated space for the mummies of Incan emperors and their wives, who were known as malquis. Because the Incas believed mummies to still be alive, serving as mediums between mortals and gods, royal mummies were traditionally surrounded by their favorite weapons and artistic treasures, adorned in gold ornaments, luxurious textiles, and exotic feathers. They were brought out of storage during special ceremonies, each assigned an attendant standing by with a fly whisk to interpret their wishes. Unlike regular mummies, royal mummies were given special treatment such as organ removal, embalming, and skin tanning. When the conquistadors arrived, the Inca people frequently moved their royal mummies in fear that they would be destroyed, and these fears certainly weren't unfounded. When the Spanish first arrived, they banned the practice of mummification on the grounds that it was a pagan ritual. They destroyed countless burial sites, using religion as their main excuse, but their Catholic faith didn't seem to stop them from plundering everything else that was of value in the grave sites, so it's fair to say their motivations were likely somewhat mixed. Thanks to these jerkwad conquistadors, however, historians and archaeologists now only have a handful of Incan burial sites that they can excavate and conduct research on. The sites that have been discovered, however, have given us an invaluable insight to the way the Inca people lived. In April of 2002, the National Geographic Society's Committee for Research and Exploration sponsored a mass excavation of an Incan graveyard a few miles east of Lima, Peru. Over 2,000 men, women, and children were unearthed, although archaeologists estimate over 10,000 bodies to have been buried there. About 40 of the mummies discovered had false heads sewn on them, which is now known to be a symbol of the mummified Inca elite. Before this discovery, only one mummy with a false head had ever been found. The Inca are the only people in the world to have built complex structures on as high of mountain peaks as the ones that they chose. Other mountainous peoples throughout world history have always tended to worship from the bottoms of the mountain peaks and not the tops. More than 40 Incan burial sites have been discovered above 17,000 feet. The first discovery of a high-altitude Incan mummy was in Chile in 1954. Due to the unique complications involved in excavating high mountainous peaks in Argentina, Peru, and Chile, scholars were required to create a new branch of archaeology known as high-altitude archaeology. The techniques of high-altitude archaeology have also been used to excavate other mountainous sites around the world, such as the Southern Alps in Europe and Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. The Incas worshipped among the highest peaks in all of South America, believing it to be the most direct route to the gods, especially the sun god Inti. Mountain deities were viewed as governors of nature who presided over crops and livestock, making them the keepers of life. The Inca believed the mountain gods to be both protectors and providers, motivating them to go to great lengths to please them. Incans believed the best way to assure rain, abundant crops, protection, peace, and order amongst the people was through human sacrifice, especially young girls, although young boys were often chosen for sacrifice as well. Choosing a human to sacrifice to the gods, especially the most important of them, the sun god Inti, was a process Incan religious and political leaders took very seriously, since sacrifices were often performed in large numbers to gain favor from the gods. Humans to sacrifice were selected based entirely on their youth and beauty, with no regards to social status. Since it was considered a great honor to be chosen as a sacrifice to the gods, willing participants were not difficult for them to acquire. Known to the Incas as Quapacucha, which roughly translates to solemn sacrifice or royal obligation in their native tongue, the practice of sacrificing and mummifying children was a grave yet essential part of their religious ceremonies. Children were viewed as the purest, most valuable commodities that could be offered to the gods, and in times of war, hunger, natural disasters, droughts, a bad crop season, or an emperor falling ill, children were sacrificed in mass numbers. Even in times of peace and prosperity, children were still frequently sacrificed at festivals and important celebrations, such as solstice changes or the birth of a royal family member. It seems that children never really got a break from being sacrificed to the gods, to be honest here. In 1985, hikers in Argentina stumbled across the ancient mummified body of a young boy on the Aconcagua mountain. Scholars estimated that he had been sacrificed about 500 years prior and had been naturally mummified by the cold, dry environment. His cause of death was determined to be blunt trauma to the head. The most remarkable part of the discovery of the Aconcagua boy is that an analysis of his mitochondrial DNA revealed that he was a member of an ethnic population that is no longer living today. Scholars agree that his people had most likely fallen victim to the tragic disease epidemic that had taken place in the Americas as a result of the Columbian Exchange. Perhaps the most famous Inca mummy due to the media attention and controversy that surrounded her is Juanita, also known as the Lady of Ampato. She was discovered by anthropologist Johann Reinhard in 1995 and is one of the most well-preserved Incan mummies ever found. It is believed that she was sacrificed in the late 1400s at around the age of 12, just like the Aconcagua boy. Her cause of death was determined to be blunt trauma to the head. She was found wearing the finest textiles the Incas would have had access to, and the cap made from the feathers of a real macaw. This, in addition to strong health and a burial tapestry with ornaments, bowls, and pins made from gold and silver, indicates that she most likely came from a noble, wealthy family. Nicknamed Juanita the Ice Maiden, the controversy that surrounded her involved her remains being removed from Ampato, where she was found, to a museum in Arequipa, Peru, a city almost 50 miles away from her burial site. Mayor Antonio Jimenez of Cabanaconde, the Peruvian village located closest to where Juanita was discovered, lamented to reporters, "They charge admission at all the museums to see her, but we have not seen a penny of the profits, even though she is our ancestor. If the mummy were here, we might get some tourists." The reason this is a difficult issue, however, is that Cabanaconde does not have the necessary facilities required to preserve Juanita, nor do they have the necessary lab equipment for scientists to continue doing tests on her that help us to learn more about who she was and her people. On one hand, I understand the frustration of Cabanaconde's mayor and citizenry, but I'm also sympathetic to scientists' concern about preserving a priceless artifact that could never be replaced if something were to happen to it. I think it's a pretty complex issue, and if you have any thoughts on it, feel free to let me know in the comments below. This will be all for today. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye!